Hello and welcome to Out of State's DMing podcast. I'm your host, lluksblackheart. Join us today as we discuss 3.5 D&D. Today's episode will be a continuation about skills. We're going to be starting off with Decipher Script. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this particular skill. Because on one hand, it can be really neat, really helpful, and really fun. Because it lets you, as it states, you can get the general gist or idea of something written in a unfamiliar language, or or a message written in a incomplete or archaic. What do you mean they're static? Is there still static? Has the static gone away? No, it's still registering something. What is it registering? I'm now having some sort of problem because it's... Hi, Lavender. There is some sort of static going on. Hello? Okay, that's not using the microphone. That's using it out of my computer. And I plug it back in, and it's saying that... I can still see it registering some sort of ambient noise. Is the static still there? Oh, static clear. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna have to... Okay, distant tick in the background. Sounds better, though. Well, the only thing I think of that's making noise in my background is either my fan on my ceiling or the fan from my computer, but it's picking up something. That is weird. Well, apparently my microphone is picking up something that I can't actually hear. I love technology and how weird it is, so bear with me as I attempt to try to figure out the volume input. Huh. I'm not deaf. Because I can see my mic is picking up something, but It's probably picking up my fan because I move my chair and it picks up my chair making noise. But as long as the that's an equip. It's a it's not a requirement, ma'am. But now that I got rid of the annoying static, when I'm done here, I'll be double checking a few things to make sure that it doesn't happen again, because I don't want it to happen again. I'll go back in depth about Decipher script. Like I said, it can be a fun skill, useful skill. Because again, you can get the general gist of what's going on, and even says in the check thing that if the check succeeds, you understand the general content of the piece of writing, about a page long. So it can be really fun, it can be useful. You can put riddles up, secret messages, things up, just random things in your campaign to make use of this skill. But the problem is how it's used versus what it's supposed to be used for. The amount of players and DMs that I found that don't actually read the skill is hilarious, and a lot of people willing to fight you over how the skill is supposed to be used. There's a majority of the people I've had experience playing with use the skill as the, oh, it's in a different language, I'm going to decipher scripts, so now this entire book in a different language I can read because I passed my decipher script check. Even though it clearly states that it takes a minute to get the general gist, not the word for word, but the general gist of a single page. And when certain people try to bring it up as like, you're misusing the skill, the amount of people go, no, I'm not. I pass it. I get to read this book now. Despite the fact it's a die roll per page, and it takes a minute per page, so there is no speed reading through it. And again, you get the general content of the writing, not detailed content, but the general content. So if it's talking about a king's tomb being guarded by knights who took a pact with a death god so they can protect their fallen king's throne, you're not going to get all that. You're going to get, here's a tomb to an important individual that's being guarded by powerful group of people. That's the general gist of the content. Location, possibly what the location is, and that it's being protected. You could probably get the gist of the location of it, so that way the party can go there, but you're not going to get the actual details of every single word or anything extremely specific. With higher skill rolls, a DM could possibly let more details slip through, but at the end of the day, it's still one page per die roll, a minute to do it, and the general content of it. Nothing specific, but the general. Not to mention the fact that the player isn't supposed to be the one to make this die roll. The DM secretly makes the die roll, and if the player passes, the DM gives him or her the general gist of the content. If it fails, well, the DM just say, oh, you're not sure what it is or thing. Now, if they fail, a DM also makes a wisdom check on behalf of the player, and if that does not pass a DC 5, then the DM gets to give false conclusions about it. So if the check fails, the wisdom check fails, in the false conclusions could be it's a unguarded tomb, or the direction that it's in location is nowhere close to where it actually is, so the DM can have some fun with it. And another thing that a lot of people fail on is the fact that you can't try again. If you've made your conclusions about that page, further die rolls won't work because it simply is a no to try again. Not to mention the fact that the DCs aren't low. A simple message or a simple text is a DC 20. So not everyone can do it, and there's a really high chance at low levels, especially if people don't put anything in it, of that particular check consistently failing until you get enough points into it to not consistently always fail. And the more difficult the text is, like a standard text, not a simple one, but a standard one, is a 25. It's a 30 for anything higher for like any sort of exotic or very old writing. So the age of the language does play into account how old and stuff it is. So there's several mitigating factors the game gets to throw in. But the general gist of it's a hard skill. The DM makes the skill. It's a time consuming skill. On top of the fact that if you it goes back to previous episodes, if you don't read the skill, you're not going to have a general gist of how to use the skill or how to try to bend the skill to have it work in other ways. Does it, my experience dealing with people like to use it as a means to go, oh, I don't speak Orc, this is written in Orc, decipher script, I can now read the entire thing clearly. When it's like, no, you get the gist of I can give you the gist of the content, but not word for word. You get the general idea of what it's trying to convey, but not word for word. Because it's not a translation skill. And people do use it as it. If you have the feat diligent, you do get a bonus to it, so that helps. And if you get 5 or more ranks into it, your use magical device gets a +2 if you're using scroll. If you're trying to cast from a scroll. So if you want to be better at casting scrolls without having to cross class or do all this other work, get 5 ranks into decipher script, and you get a +2 for your UMD versus those. The next skill is a funny skill that some people don't fully actually read, because they think that the name covers everything, and to a certain degree, yes it is. It's the skill of convincing the ogre mages that have captured you that they should ransom you back to your friends instead of, twisting your limbs off one by one because, well, they want to eat you. You can use it to convince a guard that I'm not the wanted man you're looking for. This, again, it's a diplomacy check. You can use it to change the attitude of a particular individual. And there's an entire chart for it. It normally takes at least a minute, unless the DM says otherwise, but normally it's a minute. And a big thing a lot of people misinterpret about it is the fact that you can change the attitude of others, non-player characters, with a successful diplomacy check. It specifically states non-player characters. In negotiations, particularly rolled you where you do a opposed diplomacy checks, and the winner gains the advantage. Opposed checks that also resolve situations where 2 advocating or diplomats plead opposite cases in a hearing before a third party and stuff like that. Uh, you could rush a diplomacy check, but that incurs a -10 to your die roll. So instead of it taking 10 full round actions, which is pretty much 10 full rounds of you just doing it, you can boil it down to 1 round, but you're taking a -10. Uh, Try again is optional, not recommended, because you could easily make the situation worse. If you have bluff, knowledge, nobility, or royalty, or sense motive, you can get a +2 on diplomacy checks. So there's multiple ways in with other skills to get a additional +2 to it. Now you have to remember, if you have 5 ranks in bluff, knowledge, nobility, and royalty, or sense motive, you don't get +6 because you have 5 in each of those. You only get maximum of +2. That So when you have synergies that say, hey, you can get a +2 from multiple sources, they're non-stacking multiple sources for 2 reasons. One, that or helps signify it, as if you have this, 5 ranks or more in this, or this, this, you get +2. The other reason is they count as the same type of bonus. Therefore, they don't stack with one another, because you have to remember, in D&D, the same type of bonuses do not stack. You take whatever's higher. So a synergy bonus from like having 5 ranks in bluff and the synergy bonus from having 5 ranks in sense motive do not stack with one another because they are the same bonus. They're a synergy bonus of the same amount. So don't let those things fool you, or annoying people trying to skirt little rolling things because they don't know any better, or they're just trying to min-max every little thing. The influencing NPC attitudes, as you can see, the DCs are there. It does give a generalized example of what those things possibly could do or would do. From they'll help protect, back up, heal, or aid you, to it's going to go as far as berate you, to trying to cause you physical harm. And the DCs can be low or outrageously high. And that's another reason why it's one of those optional. So if the DM says no, you can't re-roll, don't try to argue with it. You can go, come on, but don't be that person. But you can easily make someone that you've turned from unfriendly to friendly because you rolled high enough to make them friendly. But if you're like, I want him to be helpful, not friendly, well, you have to get that, make sure you beat that 20 right there, because in order to make him helpful, it's a 20. So you're probably like, I can do it here and do it. But then you roll, well, you failed to get, if you can't beat that number, well, you failed to get him to become helpful. And because you're lucky, and unless for some weird reason there's something happening to turn a bonus into a minus, you're not getting that 1. So you don't have to worry about him becoming indifferent or anything like that. But if you make a hostile target indifferent, and then you roll again because you want to try to make them friendlier, you could possibly keep them indifferent. And one of the funniest things that I've ever seen happen is someone make a hostile target unfriendly. So they're not like, I'm going to try to cause you physical harm now, but they're gonna like, not be cooperative. They're gonna do it, and they decided, you know what, I want this guy to be at least indifferent. It's like you don't want to risk that because if you fail this, you could restart the fight. It's like I have a +3, I can do this. They rolled, got a 1, which was a 4, and by the DCs, they turned an unfriendly target hostile because if you get less than 5, he's coming at you. So they reinitiated the fight and then made it harder to do it because now you're not going to make that check again because he's not going to be cooperative because he's now trying to cause you harm. Uh, well, I mean, if you're trying to rush into one round, then yeah. So a big thing to remember with diplomacy, well, several big things is one, it's a time orientated. Two, you want to make sure that you have the best bonuses ever, because again, the higher you get, the better off you can be in a circumstance. You also have to remember that not everything is going to want to diplomatize with you. It does not matter if you want to diplomatize with it. If a big, hungry ogre wants to eat you, of course, he's already hostile. But if he's like, nope, I'm not going to sit here and waste 10 pretty much a minute listening to you babbling on when I can hit you at the club and already start eating you. It's like, no. So that would force you to take the -10 and still have a chance of him just going, yeah, no, I'm going to eat you now. And another thing you have to remember is diplomacy doesn't work on other players. Because it does specifically say non-player characters. So when you're trying to diplomatize with other PCs at your table, you can have a +1 million to your diplomacy skill. That does not help you because you have to look at them, say your part, and hope they agree with you, hope they don't escalate, hope they de-escalate. But there is no die roll. There is no, oh, I'm just going to diplomatize my way out of this with another player. It's like, no. It specifically says it's for NPCs, not PCs. So use your real words, and if you can't manage to do real life diplomacy, then it's not going to work. So watch what you do, and don't use it as a catch-all for every single engagement with an intelligent creature, because sometimes, depending on what you say, you could consider it an automatic pass, because some intelligent creatures, in my experience at both a DM and as a player, it's like, oh, here's something that's not openly hostile. It can be openly indifferent towards the party, but because a lot of a lot of people have the mentality of, we find monster, we beat monster, we get treasure and XP, leaves party members to attack first, therefore ruining diplomacy. And then when they go to try to use diplomacy, it's like, no, you attacked first, you're the aggressor. You've forced its hand. So if you are trying to diplomatize out of certain things, get your party on your side. Because it doesn't take a party full of knuckleheads to ruin it for you. It takes one. One. The next skill is probably one of my favorite skills to watch people frantically stress over, and that's disable device. Yeah, it is listed as a trained only, so if you don't have anything in it, good luck, because you're not going to be able to do it. It can be used to disarm a trap, jam a lock, either to open it or close it, rig a wagon wheel to fall off, and etc. But a big thing is, like, we gotta disarm this trap. There are some examples of what devices you can fiddle with, and while it's simple, tricky, difficult, or wicked, wicked. So there's particular things you can do with it. DCs for locks are set with the locks. DCs for traps are with the traps. And a thing to remember, if you fail by 5 or more, you trigger the trap. So it is somewhat funny to have someone brag about their disabled device. They roll their disabled device, fail by 5 or more, and then you get to look at them as they trigger the trap that just set poison darts into them. Uh, Even though I personally hate traps because the number one way I've killed players has been them just blundering into a trap, or a rogue horrifically failing their disabled device check and setting off the trap. Uh, there's multiple other things that can penalize you for it. So if you don't have the proper tools, you take a -2 penalty. If you have Masterwork Thieves tools, you get a +2 to doing it. Where's the synergies? Depending on what you're trying to disarm, depends on how long it actually takes. It can be something from a simple 1 round, which is a 4-round action, to multiple rounds. Try again varies. Varies. You can retry if you've missed the check by at least 4. But you also have to be aware that you failed. 9 out of 10 times, if you think you disabled a trap, you don't know until you go to do something to trigger the trap. Because there is no... Unless it's something really, really obvious. When it comes to disarming traps or trying to pick a lock, you normally don't know unless there's audible sounds and crap like that. So if you fail to unlock a door, when you go to pull the thing, that's the triggering event that lets you know if you unlocked it or not. So it's like, okay, boom. With traps, a lot of them it's like, okay, yeah, you disarmed it. Then you walk through it, and spikes shoot from the floor trying to stab you. Player goes, I thought you said it disabled it. It's like, oh, you thought you disabled it. You didn't fail by 5 or more, so therefore it wasn't triggered. You didn't beat the DC, so therefore it wasn't disabled. But again, just because the player rolls does not mean they automatically know that they succeeded or not unless it's something obvious. This is one of those skills that does it. There is a feat, Nimble Fingers, that helps with this. Then there's also the fact that rogues who beat a DC's trap, the trap's DC by 10 or more, can study the trap and figure out how it works and bypass it along with the companions without disarming it. There's some traps do have a disarming feature where it can be just directly bypassed and turned off, or it has something that temporarily makes it not trigger for a certain amount of time. That varies from trap to trap to trap. Some bypasses, as I said, permanently disable it. Other ones has a slight timer on it on how long it resets it. There is restrictions. Yes, it's one of those skills. Rogues and other characters with trap finding class feature can disarm magical traps. A magical trap generally has a DC 25 plus the spell level used to create it. For instance, disarming a trap set by casting an explosive rune has a DC of 28 because it's a 3rd level spell. So, if what it pretty much clarifies is technically, Everyone with disabled device can disable traps if they're aware the trap is there. They can disable all sorts of random things. But if you do not have trap finding, there's a certain degree of shenanigans you cannot do. For instance, finding the trap, if it's a DC 20 or higher, to find it. And how's it says here with the restriction? If you don't have trap finding, the only way to get rid of a magical trap is for a magic user to be aware of the trap and where it's at, so that way they can dispel it, which most of the time they are not aware if they actually worked or not until someone triggers it. So it can get a little complicated, but a thing to remember is most, if not all, the things that require a disable check has the disable check DC right there with it. So there's no digging for it, there's no making it up, there's no give me 5 minutes to adjust something. It's, oh, it says this here, that's what you have to beat. Have fun. So, yeah. But just remember, just because the DM says you passed doesn't mean you always pass, though. Sometimes it's you passed. But if the DM says you think you passed, you can't go, I want to try again. It's a, this is going to suck as you walk through it. Because again, if you're under the impression you passed, you passed. The next skill is a skill not necessarily overly used that much, unless someone's using a spell to do it. Disguise. This skill is one that lets you change your appearance. So if you want to pass as another individual, disguise. If you want to not be recognized, disguise. If you want to just have your appearance not be what it normally is, disguise check is technically what you use. So if you want to use the comparison to what skill is technically used up as the how good a person is with makeup, disguise is the best one for it. It's not only a charisma skill, but because it has to normally do with makeup, any and all prosthetics, wigs, how to alter what you're wearing, also certain mannerisms, you use disguise. Even though your voices can be hard to alter and mimic, it's easier physically than it is verbally to disguise oneself. But like it says, the skill can change your appearance or someone else's. You can, the effort requires at least a few props, some makeup, and some time. A disguise kit provides a +2 to this, and technically has all the stuff you need to do it. It pretty much, you can slightly alter their height, weight, but by no more than 1/10 of their original height and or weight. So you can make them look, well, it's easier to make them look taller than it is shorter, but you can add little things to adjust that, and you can make them look a little bit more heavier set, or adding certain things to, squeeze in that midsection. I love corsets. But that's what you use to alter their appearance. It's opposed by spot checks. And most people that you would be worried about passing it, the DM can assume that such observations are taking 10 on their spot checks. So normally, most guards or city people are just generally, they're not overly focused on you, but if they do glance, they're not dedicating time, but they're like, oh, okay, yeah, bam, it's a 10, yay. There is multiple things for adjusting whether or not you get a modifier that's positive or negative. Minor details only, you get a +5. So if the DM determines something to be minor, it's easier to pass on. But if something that's disguised as a different gender, disguised as a different race, disguised as a different age, those apply minuses. Uh, the any one of these, which is the gender, race, and age, they're cumulative, meaning if you're trying to look like a woman that's a elf, and you're also trying to look young, all three of those minuses stack with one another, so you get an overwhelming -6 to the die roll. The age one is its per step of difference between your actual age category and the age category you're trying to be a part of, because it's like young, adulthood, middle age, old, and venerable, which technically means if you're trying to just look, I want to look 5 years younger, but that still falls within your same age category, it technically means the DM gets to waive the -2 because you're not you're not changing categories. If you're trying to look the different category, yes. If it's within the same category, no. If you are trying to impersonate a particular individual, those who know what the person looks like, they get a bonus to their spot checks. And furthermore, they are automatically considered to be suspicious of you, so opposed checks are always called for. And depending on how well they know the individual, it depends on just how big of a bonus they get. It can be a recognizing on sight, which is a +4, to they know the person intimately, which gives them +10. So it's kind of like someone that they see at the market every other day because the person goes to the market. So it's like, oh, on sight, they'll get a +4 to go, huh. But if it's like, I don't know, they're married, and that individual, and you're trying to impose, like, I want to pretend that I'm this woman's husband. Well, because she's intimate with her husband, she gets a +10 versus your disguise check. The action takes a die 3 times 10 in minutes. So it's either 10 minutes or 30 minutes. It is not a short action. You can try again to redo a failed disguise, but once others know that a disguise was attempted, they'll be more suspicious. Which, a big thing is you don't really know if it failed until someone goes, huh, you're not an elf. You're not even a woman. And you're older than you claim to be. That the suspicion is already there, and you can attempt to redo your disguise. But it's one of those, better off not, because they're already going to be suspicious of you, so you might as well do whatever you're doing elsewhere. That and another thing to take a note, that just because one person sees through it doesn't mean everyone else sees through it. And if one person that's suspicious of you does, then a DM can give everyone else another attempt to see through your disguise. So if you are trying to be that young barmaid and trying to get free drinks, if one person sees through it, he can go, hey, you're not a young bar wench. And his friends go, huh, redo. Magic that alters your form, such as it alters self, disguise self, polymorph, or shape change, immediately grants you a +10 on your diplomacy check. I mean, not diplomacy, on your disguise checks. You must succeed on a disguise check with a. Exactly. You're not. I'm doing this to you now. Now, Eskin, I'm doing it. You're gonna suffer. Um, yeah, you must succeed at a disguise check with the +10 bonus to duplicate the appearance of a specific individual using the veiled spell. There is spells that other things that counter it, such as True Seeing does pierce straight through it, but it does not penetrate mundane disguises. So if you're using the normal disguise skill to look like pretty much a young bar wench, someone goes, "I have True Seeing." Well, it doesn't see through the makeup or the prosthetics or anything like that. It only penetrates if a magic is being used, which some people assume that true seeing is like, I see you for what you really are. It's like, it just counters magic. If they're using shape change, disguise self, alter self, or a polymorph to do it, then you could see through it. Otherwise, it doesn't automatically counter normal one. The deceptive feat does give you a bonus. If you have a 5 or more ranks in bluff, you do get a bonus to your disguise checks. But it's only for when you are being observed and you try to act in character. Because again, you can look the part, but you have part of your disguise is acting the part. So if you have a high enough bluff, you get a +2 to people assuming that you are who you say you are without too much problems. Big thing to know that depending on what you're trying to disguise yourself as can directly impact random stuff in the game. It can get you kicked out of locations. It can get people trying to get vengeance on you. And just do some pretty random things. It all depends on what you're trying to disguise and who you're trying to fool. Another thing to note that if you're playing a race that normally has particular racial restrictions, such as you're playing an owl person and it's a snow owl person, so that means they're white with some gray accents. They may have some configuration differences to help distinguish different ones from different ones, but they generally all look alike. They're not a clone race, but they all just, if you're not uber familiar with them and or not one of them, you're not going to tell the differences between the individuals because they all kind of look the same. It's mainly height, weight, and attitude that would give it away. But if you want to make yourself more distinguished, you can use the disguise kit, roll a disguise skill, and even though you're not trying to pretend to be something else, you can use the kit because it does have dyes and stuff in it, not just wigs and prosthetics, but dyes in it. You can use that to, I want yellow feathers. I want yellow plumage. I want to have color there. You can do it. Because again, if you're trying to alter minor things, not necessarily to disguise people, but just to look different, to stand out more, disguise kit. If you're not willing to go through the effort to actually do anything with disguise, get a hat of disguise, because then you can technically look like what you want. The next skill is a skill that either A, is never used, or B, people try to use it for everything. And it's Escape Artist. Reason why I say that is because Escape Artist lets you get out of sticky situations. Ropes, manacles, tight spaces, and being grappled. So it helps you fight off those things. And it's either not used because no one wants to put anything in it because they think it's pointless, or they put stuff in it and then they try to use it for anything. Even though it's like if someone ties you up with ropes, uh, you use your escape artist check to oppose the use rope check of the person. Since it's easier to tie someone up than it is to escape being tied up, the binder gets a +10 on his or her check. So you always have to worry about someone getting really good with that +10. Manacles and Masterwork Manacles they have their set DCs, but you can use this to get out of them. Tight spaces, which is getting through where your head fits but your shoulders don't. If the space is long, such as a chimney, the DM gets a call for multiple checks, but it's one of those. As long as your head can fit, you can technically get the rest of your body to somewhat fit, as long as it like boom. So if it's like there, if you can squeeze your head through it, you can technically get a lot of stuff there, unless you have a gut like me. But by the written of it, getting through a space where your head fits but your shoulders don't, for example, tight space. If the space is long, like a chimney, the DM may may call for multiple die rolls. If you can't get through a space that your head does not fit through, yeah, it's because again you're squeezing through it. That can be hard. That can be difficult, and it all requires to passing those checks. Grapplers, you can make an escape artist check opposed by your enemy's grapple check to get out of the grapple or out of a pin. And we would have to, when we eventually get to grappling, we will be bringing this up again. Because grappling does call for it. So when I say people either don't put anything in it because they never want to use it, because they either read the skill or have had bad experiences in the past, so they're just, or they're trying to do it for everything. Like, can I escape artist past this guy? It's like, it's not a tight space. You're not being grappled. You're not bound by anything. Why are you trying to escape artist? It's like, he swung at me. Can I escape artist to not get... It's like, no. So when I say people have tried to use it for multiple things and or everything that has nothing to do with actually escaping a bound situation, I mean it. Because they want to make use of the skill, so they want to use it for every and any situation given, despite the fact it's like that doesn't work like that. If the monster's not, if you're not bound by any way, then there is no need for escape artist check. And even it goes to the restraints listed, like ropes, nets, the spell entangled, snares, manacles, tight spaces, masterwork manacles. Yeah, it just... So instead of having to go look those specific things up for their DCs, because again, a lot of things have their DCs written with them, like the manacles are a DC 30, masterwork are 35. So that's going to be really hard for you to get out of unless you're super good or have really excellent die rolls. Ropes, just like it says there, it's the binder's use rope check, and they get a +10 with it. Grapple is first their grapple check. So if you don't like being grappled by monsters that grapple, because your DM is throwing grappling monsters at you, instead of trying to go, I need to get stronger and get my base attack higher, it is a lot easier to just splurge on escape artist. It does use your dexterity, but if it's a class skill, you have to remember that you get 3 plus your level is your maximum ranks in it. So at level 1, not counting dexterity, you can have a 4 in Escape Artist. If it's cross class, it costs 2 points per one, and you can only have a max of 2 ranks in it. So it's even if it's cross class, it's a 2. So unless you're like a fighter, a barbarian, or any of those classes that have a high base attack and a high strength, Escape Artist can be the easiest way to guarantee that monsters can't grapple you. But you're going to have to dedicate points to it. The action restrictions are based on the circumstance. Some require most restraints require at least a minute of work. Being grappled doesn't count because it's round per round. Squeezing through a tight space may take a minute to squeeze through. Try again. It varies based on what it is. Some things you do, like if you're trying to squeeze through, you can take and fail. That just means you're stuck. So like making multiple checks to get through can. Other things, as long as the thing is active to a certain degree, you can. So you somewhat stress there. The Agile feat does help with Escape Artist. If you have 5 or more ranks in Escape Artist, you get a +2 to your use rope. If you have 5 or more ranks in use rope, you get +2 to your Escape Artist. So both of those skills help each other's. So if you want to get that synergy bonus for your Escape Artist, put at least 5 ranks in use rope. Forgery is going to be the last skill we're going to cover for today. It is a simple skill, but a skill that can easily be messed up on. For example, if you steal documents for land and you do forgery to change who the owner is, you have to pay attention to certain key things. What language is it written in? What ink is it written in? What paper is it written on? All these things can determine if you auto-fail or get minuses to it. For example, in one of the games I ran a long time ago, a party member stole documents from the archives of another party member and completely copied them, and he messed up on multiple accounts because he wanted to complete forgeries on it. He bought the wrong paper because he bought normal paper, not parchment. Yes, not the same type of paper, size, thickness, and weight. He didn't use the same ink because it was written in a red ink, but he used normal black ink. It was also not written in the same language, which it was written in Abyssal because the character who did all that stuff wanted to make sure that it was one step harder for people to alter it, forge it, because you have to be able to read and write not a common language, because Abyssal is not a common language. So when the person wrote it in common, using the wrong ink on the wrong paper, it set red flags up. He also didn't use any of the stamps at all that mark it, and did not accurately get the signature of approval from any of the authorities that were to do it because he didn't have their names. He didn't do any research on who of these legal people would to do it. So he completely messed up when he replaced these documents with obvious forgeries. So that way he was caught trying to pretty much steal land, not like a house on a spot of land, but he wanted to have it set up for over 50 acres of land, and set himself up to be the next in line. If this person dies, he gets to rule and govern over everything. So it's one thing to make it suspicious, it's another thing to just completely use the wrong material. Again, paper instead of parchment, black ink instead of red ink, not in the same language. So it's certain things that can automatically make you fail if you're not paying attention. And there is multiple things that it goes right in here. There's multiple bonuses it's listing. This requires writing material appropriate to the documents being forged. Keywords: appropriate for the documents. Enough light and sufficient visual acuity for the details written. Wax for seals if appropriate. And some time. A forged document on which handwriting is not specific to a particular person. Military orders, government decree, business ledgers, or like. You need only to have a similar document before, and you get a +8 on your check. To forge a signature, you need a autograph of the person to copy, and you get a +4 on that check. So it goes into different layers of if it's not something that is specific to a person. Bonus right there. If you only need to have a similar document, yay. If you need a signature, so it's little things that can help to end up getting you either obviously no one's going to question it, to you get bonuses for it. The player does not make the check. The DM makes the check. And the player does not know until, someone goes, forgery. It's one of those things that you have to wait until someone triggers it, everyone interacts with it, before they can tell if it's a forgery or not. Then you have to wait for them to reveal that it's a forgery. It does go into conditions that can either increase or decrease the result. The document is unknown to the reader. The document is somewhat known to the reader. The reader only casually reviews the document. Handwriting intimately known to the reader. So it's like there's particular things that can automatically trigger a +1 or a +2. Well, no, not +1. A -2 or a +2 on the result based on the exactity of it. A document that contradicts. Wow, my brain stopped working. Pretty much, if it's contradicts other things that happening, or that requires a sacrifice on part of the person checking the documents, can increase the suspicion and thus cause favorable circumstances for the checkers opposing checks. So if you alter it to a certain degree that obviously is wrong, like the example I used earlier, he put himself up to inherit everything upon this other player's death, which contradicts all the documents and stuff saying that person's children get it. And it's a heavy matriarchal position, which for those that aren't aware, matriarchals, women, not in the bad way, but in the general good way, this matriarchal societies are ran by women. So upon the player's death, the eldest daughter inherits all that stuff. But the player, being A, not related by blood, and B, male, contradicts all this other matriarchal stuff that's going on, which would automatically make someone go, That's not right. So there are certain things that can immediately fumble simply by lack of improper material that matches the original, and or lack of knowledge on what needs to actually happen, or lack of knowledge on who would be reading it. uh, Most of the time you can't redo it. It's one of those situations that, um, according to you, it's perfect, it's flawless. If another player who's somewhat aiding you decides to take it, look at it, cover it for you, they can go, "Oh, you messed up here, here, and here. Oh, and you also need to redo it on the correct on the correct parchment." Dutiful does help by giving you +2, so there's a feat that does help. Um, and there's a restriction. Forgery is language dependent. Just like the example I used before, he didn't write it in the same language. He wrote it in a completely different language. Thus, to forge a document and detect forgeries, you must be able to read and write the language in question. A barbarian can't learn forgery skill unless he has learned to read and write. Reason why that brings up barbarians: barbarians are illiterate, which means they can't read or write. You have to literally spend skill points to learn how to read and write a specific language. It doesn't help you with all languages, it helps you with that specific one. So if a language is written in a if a document is written in a specific language, Abyssal, if you do not know how to read and write Abyssal, you're not going to be able to copy a document. But if you can, and you write the document in another language that's not matching that language, yeah, you're auto failing, because if all the documents are in Abyssal and you write one in Common, you can get everything else right. But the fact it's written in another language is a dead giveaway that you've done goofed. It's also one of those things that do your proper research on what you're trying to forge. If you cannot get access to what you're trying to forge, so like if you're trying to get papers that let you roam around the city with all your weapons, if you don't have the document to forge, then you're not going to be able to actually do it, because again, if you don't know what to write, you're not going to be able to pull it off. Make sure you get the right signatures. Make sure they look correct. That's another reason why you want to actually look at things and do some moniker of research before trying to duplicate anything through forgery. Otherwise, you can get penalties that can lead to you failing, and or you just automatically failing because you screwed up somewhere. Use an example of not the right ink, not the right paper, maybe it was parchment, and not the right language. So it's different things you have to consider. So it's not an easy skill to get away with. But on that note, I will be ending it here. Thank you for watching. Remember to tune in next week as we discuss more skills. And remember to like and subscribe.